for Where Hollywood Hides. Here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke!
I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
We're on a mission from God.
Run, Forrest, run!
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
You had me at hello.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
I'm not going to be ignored.
Here comes the judge.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I got nowhere else to go!
Small cowbell.
That fashion.
There's anything wrong with that. You can't handle the truth.
I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star!
That's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all. I'm the dude.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business like no business.
Hi, welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. This is podcast episode number 46. My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera-McCullough.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Bob.
Pretty excited about today.
Before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a very important question. What are you going to be for Halloween?
What am I going to be for Halloween? Where do you come up with this stuff?
Well, our granddaughters asked me this morning.
Do I have to be something?
Our granddaughters asked me this morning if I was going to give candy out. And I said yes. And they asked me what I was going to be. And I said, I don't know. One of them said I should be a witch. So do you think they're trying to give me a hint?
Yes. Maybe they think that would be typecasting?
Maybe I should ask you what you think.
I think you should be Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Hey, listen, today's interview is really unique in that we are interviewing probably one of the most powerful people in the movie business over the last 25, 30 years.
A fascinating career to have.
Today's guest is David Ansen. He was the chief film reviewer and editorial director at Newsweek magazine throughout from 77 to 2008. He was a senior editor there. Prior to that, he was the chief critic at Boston's The Real People. And he's been on the selection committee of the New York Film Festival. He's written several documentaries that have been on television. Wrote the life story of Greta Garbo, the story of Groucho Marx, Elizabeth Taylor. And he won an ACE Award for his writing on the Bette Davis documentary. He's been a juror at Sundance. He's a member of the New York Film Critics Circle, the National Society of Film Critics, the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, and he's a 3-time winner of the Page One Award from the Newspaper Guild of New York. David Ansen is a unique and brilliant guy.
You know how I love to read all sorts of kinds of things about Hollywood? I found something very funny. The psychology of the Hollywood beard.
Uh-oh.
Now, you have a beard. There are 9 beards here, and not one is like yours.
Oh, see? So I'm number 10.
So I don't know what that says.
Okay.
Anyway, I found this hysterical. There's the retirement beard, which David Letterman has right now.
Okay.
It's a real bushy
Just
beard.
Scruffy,
yes.
Yeah.
The rehab beard. John Hamm has that right now.
Really? 3 weeks at Betty Ford, that's the beard you get?
The depression beard. O'Brien has that.
Conan O'Brien, okay.
And the director beard, the hiatus beard, the breakup beard, the lucky beard, the viral marketing beard. Anyway, it was...
And my beard's not there? Come on.
Your beard is not there.
The still working beard.
The beard is so in now that some people, I guess some men, you would know this. Well, you would know it because you have a great beard, but I guess some men, when they grow their beards, it's kind of patchy.
Yeah.
So now they are doing implants.
You're making this up,
No,
right?
It says here, in true Hollywood fashion, if a man can't grow it naturally, cosmetic surgery can help.
Oh, my God.
Beard transplants, usually done with hair taken from the back of their head. It runs between $10,000 and $15,000. You have a fortune on your face.
They're putting hair on your face?
Right. Only Hollywood can come up with this stuff.
Unbelievable.
So I guess
you should be more appreciative of my beard.
I should.
Maybe I'll just let it grow even longer.
Maybe I'll
what do you
just
think?
Stroke it more.
Perfect. Well, listen, today's interview is going to be a lot of fun. So
here's David.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
It's been a while. My wife Suzanne is with us.
Hi, David. It's a pleasure.
Good. Hi.
David, at first I want to thank you for doing this. I know you've got a lot on your plate right now. shifting responsibilities, moving from one festival to another. How does a guy who went to high school with me wind up becoming an internationally known film critic? I mean, it's not like you said, I want to be an actor, and you went out into that world. You kind of stood above it all.
So we kind of want to go way back, if you don't mind, for a second.
Okay. I'm willing to go way back.
Tell us about your childhood a little bit, what your parents were like, where you were raised.
Were your parents in the movie business at all?
Yes, as a matter of fact. My father, as I was growing up, worked at MGM back in the days when the studios produced two-reeler shorts that ran with their features. They were called the Pete Smith Specials. They were these comic two-reelers that were very popular. Even won some Oscars.
They're on TMC now, aren't they?
They pop up on TCM.
TCM, yeah.
As filler every now and then.
So did you actually say your father won an Oscar?
The producer of the shorts won an Oscar.
Wow, that's a big deal.
And, one of the other writers was Harry Park Your Carcass Einstein, who was the father of Albert Brooks.
Oh, boy.
Whose real name is Albert Einstein,
right?
Who also went to high school with us, I think, a few years behind us. Then he went on. He wrote co-wrote a couple of feature films. He worked for Columbia in the 60s when the studios made their own in-house trailers. That's now all farmed out to independent companies. Mm-hmm. But he would do the previews of coming attractions for movies like In Cold Blood, for example. So, yes, I was kind of to the movie manner born.
So you were around it a lot.
I never really planned on becoming a film critic. It wasn't something, I said this was the goal of my life. But when I was 12 years old, I started keeping a list of every movie that I saw. And I would write down the title of the movie and who was in it, and I gave it a rating.
Really?
Wow. So there you go.
You had the instinct.
So, the die was cast. And then a couple of years later, I discovered there was such a thing as a director, and I started adding the name of the director. And I've kept this list up my entire life. It's like a diary of my life. I can look back at it and see the title and remember where I saw it.
So you've managed to channel your OCD a little bit.
Exactly. But it's true.
So at a very early age, you loved seeing films and commenting on them. Mm-hmm. In one way or the other, just writing it down.
Yeah.
That's very fascinating at such an early age.
I mean, interestingly, many years later, when I actually started professionally becoming a critic, I stopped giving it a rating. I left that part blank. But, there's over 10,000 movies on that list.
Wow. So in high school, you were a very high academic achiever, as I recall.
Well, you went pretty well.
You went to Harvard.
As long as I wasn't taking chemistry.
You and me both. Right.
It was a complete disaster at chemistry.
Well, you can't be good at everything, David.
The class that I think I probably was the most valuable that I took in high school was typing.
So you wound up going to Harvard. Did you major in film?
There were no majors in film at that time.
Right.
You couldn't major in film. Well, I always knew that I wanted to write. I started writing stories in grammar school, short stories. And by the time I got to Harvard, my ambition actually was to be a playwright. I wrote a bunch of plays in high school, and I put on one of my one-act plays my freshman year at Harvard. And theater was kind of my interest. And then theater got a lot less interesting, and movies got a lot more interesting. Starting in high school, I remember seeing all those French New Wave movies started to come out, like The 400 Blows,
right,
and Hiroshima Mon Amour. I had very, serious tastes in movies in high school, and saw a tremendous number of the foreign films. It was kind of the glory days of foreign films,
right,
and English movies, as well as the Hollywood stuff.
Were you aware in college of what I think was kind of the sea change in American cinema in the 60s, the rise of the anti-hero and kind of a different way of telling stories?
Yeah, although I think in the American cinema that really didn't happen until the 70s, that big radical shift, somewhat influenced by European cinema. But yes, absolutely.
Were your parents supportive of your ambition in writing?
Oh, yeah, they were, actually. My father was, he was my first critic, really. And he was, actually, it sounded very, very valuable. He was not one of these fathers who, when you wrote something, everything you wrote was like genius. He would, point out where it could be better and, what I could, fix this, fix that. He was a bit of a tough critic, but encouraging. And
obviously helpful.
So I learned to take criticism at an early age very well.
So let me ask you this question. I know you wrote a very insightful article recently in Elevate where you discuss your newfound interest in television. Why at that time, when most of us of the same age were literally glued to the tube, every waking hour, you obviously were not. Tell us why do you think that happened, and what do you see over that long period of time, the difference between what makes a movie and what makes a TV show, in your opinion? Because they're vastly different. They are vastly different. But television has changed so much in the last few decades. When we were growing up, it was just network television, and like many people, when I was a kid, I loved, Have Gun Will Travel and Gunsmoke and
I love those.
And Bullwinkle, and I liked television, but it wasn't, there was something, it didn't satisfy me the way that movies did. It was never that total immersion because the quality of it wasn't the same. Although I do remember watching, this was back in the days of sort of live television dramas, Playhouse 90. Do you remember that? Sure, sure. And, a lot of actually terrific film directors were working in that medium. Came out, John Frankenheimer did a lot of those Playhouse 90s, which I was aware of. And then he became, he directed The Manchurian Candidate. Right. And a lot of major acting talent came out of that period as well. Absolutely, yeah. But, there were long stretches of my life when I absolutely watched no television at all. In college, you didn't have a TV in your room, and somehow I didn't miss it. But I was going to the movies religiously, so I'm kind of an illiterate about certain years of television when everybody was watching these famous shows. I didn't see them at all.
So what was your very first job as a critic, whether it's a paid gig or not? And how did you get there? I mean, you don't walk in the door and say, "Hi, I'm your next film critic." No, my first job as a movie critic, I did some theater criticism in college. But anyway, I started my career in Boston at a little paper called The Real Paper, which was a sort of countercultural weekly. I started as a freelancer. I got to be friends with the guy who was the movie critic there, and he let me do a couple of little freelance pieces that I think, I was paid $15 for. Then a second critic had the job, and then when he left, the position was open to be the editor of the film section and the main critic, which I applied for. And at that point in my life, I desperately needed a job. I was pretty much broke. And those jobs don't pay very well, do they? I mean, no, but in those days, we're talking about in 1975 and 4. You really didn't need much money at all. But they couldn't make up their minds. The editor of the paper wanted to hire a name, and I certainly wasn't a name. But I ended up getting the job. It sort of took off from there. 2 years later, I was hired by Newsweek. So you were really kind of walking a career high wire, if you will, when our peers at that time were out of college 7-8 years. They are beginning to practice law, perform surgery, and command military troops, for example. Right. They're becoming leaders of society and commerce, and you have taken a truly artistic turn. Yeah, I mean, I went off and literally lived in the wilderness for a couple of years in my commune days, and ended up back east, really not knowing what I was going to do. I survived for a couple of years writing cover copy for paperback books. I knew some publishing people in New York. And I would write the blurbs on the front and back cover of paperback novels. Did you have to read them to do that? My God. Sometimes, hilariously enough, the books weren't available or weren't even written yet. The funniest thing I ever did in that job, I wrote a lot of copy for women's Gothic novels. And in one case, it's
traditional that on the page one you write you select a little scene from the book.
Right.
Tantalizing scenes. It was not unlike what my father did making trailers. And this book hadn't even been written. There was just an outline. And I actually made up a scene from the movie, from the book.
Perfect.
And wrote it as if it were a quote from the book. How they found that acceptable, I don't know.
What an imagination.
Welcome to that version of show business. Wow.
Yeah, really.
So you're managing to survive as a writer. And
I'm managing to survive, and then when I land this job, even though it didn't pay terribly well, it seemed like a lot of money to me at the time, having been, I was down to my last $10. I was either going to become a movie critic or, maybe drive a cab. Fortunately, I got the job. It was a very interesting period because there were two papers in Boston at the time, the Real Paper and the Boston Phoenix. And they were almost like the farm clubs for the majors, in that almost every movie critic of my generation who ended up in New York at big publications came out of those two papers. Janet Maslin had been the critic at the Boston Phoenix, and she actually was the critic at Newsweek before me. She was there not long, maybe for a year or so, before she was moved over to the New York Times. When that position came open, I applied for the Newsweek job, figuring, it was a long shot, but why not?
Yeah, I mean, Newsweek's a huge step up.
A huge step up, but they liked my work, and I later found out, I didn't even know it at the time, that one of the people who had recommended me was Pauline Kael.
Recommendations don't cut much higher than that.
Very flattered by that one. She called me one day at the, she was famous for following young critics, and just out of the blue, she called me up at the Real Paper to compliment me on a piece I'd written, and we arranged a meeting. I was out in Western Massachusetts. She had a house in Great Barrington, and she invited me to come out and say hi. So
that must have been exciting, because she was very much a celebrity in her own right. I mean,
she was a huge celebrity. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the era of celebrity movie critics.
Right. A real power broker, right up there. How would you compare Pauline Kael to Rex Reed?
Rex Reed had no influence over. He was an influential critic, but he had no influence over criticism, over other critics. Pauline had a whole school of people called the Paulettes, who kind of aped all her opinions and her style. I was not a Paulette, although I was a great fan of hers. But it was the days of great movie critic feuds, and the big battle was between Pauline Kael and Andrew Sarris, who was, the dean of the auteur critics.
That's right.
And they would write scathing pieces about each other, and they truly detested each other personally.
The movies became ancillary to their feud, right?
Yeah, really. The irony was that she, in her own way, became as big an auteurist as him, but with a different canon. In those days, movies were right at the sort of hot center of culture in a way that they're not now. And movie criticism was, people really followed critics, and great battles ensued. And
now for our listeners who are probably not really aware of the nature and intent of criticism, can you give us an idea, even back then in your early writing, what were the elements that go into a critical piece? I mean, you're not just writing your opinion about things; you're analyzing both the
you're bringing a lot of things. You're bringing your whole knowledge, of course, the background of film and of genre and of society. You're writing about the world. You're writing about the film. You're writing about ways of looking at the world. You try to bring everything to bear on a piece. And in those days, the Real Paper had a lot of space to do that. I mean, everybody has an opinion. That's the easy part.
But it's
and you also discover, in the process of writing, how you feel. I always say, I do my best thinking when I'm writing. You discover things you may not even have realized.
Sure.
Are you influenced at all by the actors in the movie, or do you basically just look at the whole piece in terms of you liking them or not personally? I mean, because I know everybody has their favorites.
That's true. That's true. You do have your favorites, and there are some people that kind of rub you the wrong way. You know, as you get older and you've been around, you learn things about these people that you try not to bring into your thinking when you...
That must be so hard.
Yeah, I mean, actors are a vital component of a movie, and sometimes a movie can be severely damaged if the wrong actor is in the wrong role. But sure, you have favorites, and there's certain people that, you know, you want to see in anything that they do. I always used to say that you're watching a movie with two eyes. You know, a part of you has to watch the movie like an ordinary filmgoer, and you laugh and you cry and you react. And the other side of your brain is kind of analyzing why you're reacting the way you are, if the emotion is genuine and earned or cheap and manipulative. So you're sort of, it's this delicate balance. You can't lose sight of that basic gut instinct, you know. Right. Then you're, I think, kind of worthless as a critic if you can't.
Have you ever found yourself so caught up in a film that you've had to see it again with the critical eye?
Once in a while, you get very, you know, I mean, I often get caught up in film. And sometimes you perhaps overreact to something that years later it will look a little different to you. I mean, that's another fascinating thing about how time and context changes your feelings about movies. Yeah, and there's sometimes when you're torn, you know, you're very divided. There was a case once with a movie that I saw and was very emotionally moved by, and I think I saw it quite far in advance. In those days, the studios would sometimes show you movies, you know, months before they open, and you'd have lots of time to think. And I went back and I saw it again before I wrote about it, and had a quite different and much less positive reaction to it. It was a dilemma, like, what review do I write? Do I go with my original instinct, which was a more emotional instinct, or do I go with my second? And I did a sort of balancing act, but I favored the first response, because that's sort of the way people are going to be seeing that movie.
Right. That's right. I think you're absolutely right. Even those of us who are not critics, Bob and I have been guilty of just loving or hating a movie, and we oftentimes see it again, and we do not like the one we loved so much, and we sometimes see the value in the one that we didn't like. So you're right.
Right. And you realize, you know, certain movies stay with you, and even you think you don't like them, but they won't leave you. It tells you something. You know, there's something going on there. And then also, you know, later when I started going to film festivals, like I would go to Cannes for 8 years in a row. I had an ancillary job when I was at Newsweek on the selection committee for the New York Film Festival. And part of that job was to go to Cannes and scout for movies. And in that context, you know, you're seeing, you know, 4 movies a day, you're tired, you're jet lagged, you're kind of overstimulated, people are falling asleep next to you and snoring loudly. You know, and movies in that context look different. And I got to the point where I wouldn't necessarily trust my reactions to movies that I would see in Cannes, and would want movies that didn't look so good in that context, I would see again back at home and realize, oh, they were much better than I thought they were.
Interesting. From a practical standpoint, how soon after you see a film do you sit down to write?
That's an interesting question these days, because one of the big changes in film criticism, which I think is unfortunate, is that because of the pressures of the Internet, most critics these days who are writing for online have no time to think about the movies. They have to write their reviews immediately after they see the film. But in those days, I would often have a lot of time to think about it. It would vary, of course, depending on when the studio showed you. But writing for a weekly, you know, I usually had a couple of weeks. I would not go right back and start writing. For one thing, I always had to wait to find out how much space I had. At Newsweek, they were very specific. I mean, I had 57 lines for this review, and 120 for this, and 40 for this. And there was no flexibility. I mean, that's how many lines you had. So there was no point in sitting down and writing a 200-line review if you were only going to get 75 lines. So I would wait until I knew, which was always the week of. But sometimes you'd have to write really fast.
When you were at Newsweek, was the choice of films yours?
To a large extent, it was. When I first got there, well, there were 2 of us who sort of divided. Jack Kroll and I divided the film reviewing duties, and he was senior, and there were certain directors that he wanted to write about. Then as things changed, I sort of became the senior guy, and there were movies that you obviously had to write about because they were, if a Star Wars came along, you weren't going to ignore it. I mean, I have an interesting story about that too. I actually wrote a cover story, in the 90s when they revived the series. My review was the first review published of it, and this was the most eagerly anticipated movie in decades, right?
Right.
And I saw it on a Friday night at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my!
We had a meeting at Newsweek, and they decided they wanted to do a cover story on it. And the magazine came out on Monday, right? So I had to start writing at about midnight. A cover story is a long piece.
Right. It's not 75 lines. Right.
I had to pull an all-nighter. And my review came out, and it was quite negative. And the hate mail I got, it's like, kill the messenger. You can't possibly be right. I mean, history has vindicated me, but at the time I was like the most reviled critic in the nation.
Did Newsweek management have any sway over that? In other words, did they want to edit you? Did they say, whoa, slow it down a little bit, don't be so harsh, it's on the cover, for God's sakes, we're going to be selling ads?
No, to their great credit, Newsweek was very good about this. They did not interfere. They never told me, like, you got to give this a good review, or, don't be so harsh. Interestingly enough, there were several movies on the cover that I wrote negative reviews of. For example, Pearl Harbor. Newsweek liked to tie in movies to historical events. So they wanted to do a big Pearl Harbor anniversary piece with a lot of pieces that weren't really movie-related, but the movie image was on the cover, and my review was sort of a sidebar, and I wrote a very negative review of it. Even though it was on the cover, it's a pretty terrible movie.
Well, you guys are coming from different perspectives. They want to sell magazines, and you want to share your wisdom, basically.
Right. Yeah. But to Newsweek's credit, they never put pressure on me to change, my opinion, which I can't say is true of some other magazines.
Let me ask you this question. As a film critic, at some point in time, your profile began to really rise, and your impact on the industry certainly began to be felt. When you write a review of Star Wars number 12 or whatever it was, I'm sure, for example, Suzanne and I did not see that because we may have read your review. Where do you see your role, or quote, do you have a responsibility to the industry? I mean, you can kill a movie. I mean, Star Wars was a $200 million deal with Prince and advertising.
Well, that was an unkillable movie, Absolutely.
That's as much as you try.
I mean, a lot of movies that I panned some huge successes, and they were critic-proof, and I was very aware of that, which was actually sort of liberating, because I knew I couldn't really do any damage. Mm-hmm. I could warn off people who, wouldn't want to go, but the great masses, there's no way a bad review was going to deter them. But what I would do, it's with a smaller movie, if there was a little independent movie or a foreign film that I really didn't like, I would often not review it. Because there you can really kill a movie, and there you can really help a movie. You have much more power over the smaller film.
So David, when you received your hate mail, that obviously was something memorable for you. Mm-hmm. The next review you wrote, did you have any hesitation?
No, it didn't.
You just kept going.
It was very funny. There was a site online at the time that Roger Ebert told me about. No longer exists. This is back in the days of sort of online bulletin boards.
Yeah, sure.
And he told me, he said, there's a site you can, put in your name, and you can see what people are saying about you. He said, I warn you, you may not want to do this. But of course, curiosity killed the cat.
Right.
And I couldn't resist. But however, my timing was terrible because it was right after that review came out. So the topic sentence was, David Ansen is a moron. And it went on from there and just got worse and worse.
How do you actually select a film for review? What are your criteria?
Well, there's different criteria, and it depends on who you're writing for, of course. But as I said, at Newsweek, there's certain obvious movies that you review, and then there's the movies that sometimes I had to fight to review movies if they were more obscure. I mean, what's actually one of the most interesting things is I worked at Newsweek for over 30 years, and the culture and the magazine changed a lot in those times. The whole philosophy of what you cover and why. And the change, which I think was not a good one, and it happened not just at Newsweek but everywhere, magazines started to think like movie studios, like, well, let's put this on the cover because it'll sell. This is what people want to see. Sometimes I would come out with a 10 best list, and I would mix it up between the movies that everybody knew about, and there might be a couple of titles there that a lot of people hadn't seen.
Well, David, we don't have an unlimited amount of time. There are a couple of questions I really want to ask you.
Oh, I have more too.
And you can answer very quickly, succinctly, if you like. Have you ever walked out of a movie?
I'll put it this way: if I was reviewing it, obviously I wouldn't walk out. There were very few instances at Newsweek where I'd go see a studio movie and I just sort of slipped out and hoped that nobody saw. I mean, of course I wouldn't write about it, but it was just like, life is too short. This is like causing me pain. Where you do walk out, where everybody walks out of movies, is at film festivals. For example, when I was in Cannes, I was wearing two hats. I was writing about Cannes for Newsweek, but I was also on the selection committee of the New York Film Festival. In that capacity, if something really, after 20 or 30 minutes, is clearly not working, you leave and you try to get into something else.
Have you ever, or do you ever take notes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you do?
I do take notes. The funny thing, though, is that I rarely can read them. Which has gotten worse over the years. I scribble down because I don't want to take my eyes off the screen.
Right.
So I write notes, and sometimes I write, 3 times over the same line. It's just this big wad of ink. What the hell is that?
That's funny. Writing across your knee. Right. Funny. If you could only see one movie, this is your last day on Earth. There's only one movie you can see. What is that movie?
Oh boy,
that would be a hard question to answer.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting. I mean, the question is a little bit different from like asking me what my favorite movie is.
That's right.
Because, I mean, the movie that I would usually answer, there's a movie that I've seen over and over, and it never ceases to give me pleasure. But since I've seen it so many times, I don't know that I would choose that on the day I die.
You gotta know. What is it?
That's the Third Man
with
Joseph Cotten and Orson Welles, which I first saw on television when I was, in high school.
Right.
And fell in love with. And it never, it's like a perfect movie. It's just one great scene after another.
Can you actually go to a movie for pleasure and sit there without taking it apart?
Sure.
So you can just enjoy it. Oh, good.
When you're no longer capable of doing that, you should hang up your spurs as a critic. I mean, I love movies, and I go to them, and I often just go to the movies because I'm not a regular critic anymore. Now, I'm curating and programming, but I still just run out to the movies that I want to see, even though I have no intention of writing about them, hoping to enjoy them. When I ask people, and the subject always comes up, what is your favorite movie? I've found that when you ask people that, chances are the answer you will get is a movie that person saw roughly between the ages of 13 and 17.
You're absolutely right, with me anyway.
Which director do you most admire?
Well, that's a really hard one to answer. At different points in my life, I had different favorite directors. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think of the somewhat younger, he's not that young anymore, but, of the current guys, the one whose films I anticipate the most is Paul Thomas Anderson.
From the perspective of looking at a director's work, what do you attribute most to the success of a directorial effort? Is it vision? Is it casting? Is it script? There's so many elements that go into directing a picture.
There are so many elements. I don't know if you can narrow it down to one, but there's certain directors who have a very specific and personal vision. I mean, if you go to see a Robert Altman movie, there's no mistaking it for anybody else's movies.
Right.
So I just have one more question, Bob.
Because then I want to play a game with David. Okay.
So real quickly, David, what do you think about TV these days? Because it has changed immensely.
Yeah. Well, TV is obviously, when you in Los Angeles, when you go out to a party, to a dinner party, everybody's talking about their favorite TV shows.
Yep,
series.
you're right.
You know, they're not talking about movies.
No.
It's got this vitality. I mean, as I said in that piece that I wrote for Elevate, you know, that movies are, you know, right now more like one-night stands, but if you want a relationship, you watch television.
I almost left my wife for Breaking Bad.
Yes, it could happen. I mean, Breaking Bad is so addictive. It's like crack, you know.
He was obsessed. He was obsessed.
Can't stop watching. And it allows you to be so deeply immersed in the world and in the characters because of the time, the element of time. There's so many talented writers and directors now working in television that's really where and they're given a freedom that filmmakers often aren't given. So I think that partly explains why television is so good right now.
Before we jump into your festival experience and where you're going next, which is fascinating, I want to play a quick little game with you. Strictly a movie critic game. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm going to give you two titles. Tell me which one. Boyhood or My Left Foot?
Boyhood.
Goodfellas or Godfather?
Godfather.
Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan?
Schindler's List. Saving Private Ryan, the first part of Saving Private Ryan.
All right, no explanation. You're not allowed to explain yourself.
I agree with that.
All right, you're not allowed to explain yourself. L.A. Confidential or Traffic?
That's a tough one.
Okay.
L.A. Confidential by a hair.
Thank you. No Country for Old Men or Silence of the Lambs?
I think, sort of based on my initial visceral reaction, I have to go with Silence of the Lambs.
The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30?
The Hurt Locker.
American Hustle or Fargo?
Well, gosh. These are tough.
I like to, you know what? I'm enjoying stumping the guy from Harvard. Okay.
This will surprise you, but American Hustle.
Okay. The Fighter or The Wrestler? I won't even throw Raging Bull in there.
The Fighter.
Okay. And going back a little bit, A Man for All Seasons, The Lion in Winter?
Not a big fan of either.
All right, you're allowed to buy. We'll call that your buy.
Yeah, I would pass on both of those.
Okay. Brokeback Mountain or Milk?
Brokeback.
And my favorites, last question, Apocalypse Now or Deer Hunter?
Wow. I could go on and on about it. Well, again, based on initial reaction,
yep,
The Deer Hunter.
Thank you. Okay.
I mean, Apocalypse Now, there's two versions of Apocalypse Now.
Right.
There's two separate movies.
Well, congratulations, you won the game.
What do I get?
Right.
It'll be in the mail.
You get another question. Let me ask you this. You've been involved in so many film festivals, from Sundance, Toronto, LA, Telluride, and you're moving off to, what's your new title going to be in Palm Springs?
I'm the lead programmer.
You're the head cheese. You're the guy everybody wants to get to.
I'm not the head cheese there. I mean, there's a festival director who's above me, but
right,
I'm one of the main programmers.
But in terms of artistic,
the artistic,
the arbiter of taste.
That's what I did at the LA Film Festival. I was kind of the main.
Tell us a little bit about, and I can only imagine, because we live in Santa Barbara, and the Santa Barbara Film Festival has become a fairly big deal. It's certainly a huge deal in this town. It attracts a lot of celebrities. Give me a little bit of notion of what the politics of film festivals are like, because I have a feeling it gets pretty political.
Well, yeah. I mean, it varies a lot from festival to festival. The Palm Springs Film Festival is very interesting because it's specialty. Well, for one thing, it's unlike, say, the Los Angeles Film Festival. Palm Springs is what they call a destination festival.
You bet.
As is Sundance. People go there just to go to the festival,
right,
and to go to Palm Springs. So you have a kind of built-in audience. Also, because of the timing of the festival, it happens in early January, and a few weeks later is Sundance. Now, what that means is Sundance's specialty, of course, is American independence. Palm Springs' specialty is foreign language film, and the audience is very game. Each country, submits one film for the Academy Awards.
Right.
And in Palm Springs, we curate like the best, say, 40 and show them. And they're very well attended.
This is your opportunity for a shameless plug, because our podcast is heard in 70 countries plus. What are the dates of the festival?
The opening night is January 1st.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Happy New Year.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's from the 1st to the 11th, and the big gala is on the 2nd, which is kind of a star-studded event.
Oh, this will be exciting. That'll be a holiday event.
It's going to be fun.
Listen, David, this has been fantastic talking to you. Suzanne and I may come down for that because we actually have a place in Palm Springs where we can stay, and I would love to see you. So let's stay in touch, and I can only encourage all of our listeners to take a look at David's critical history. Newsweek Online has your reviews.
Very impressive.
Google my name.
Okay. And it comes
and a
up.
lot of that stuff will come up.
Yeah.
And one piece in particular, which gives you an overview, which is actually a piece I wrote that kind of is structured around that list that I've told you about that I've kept.
This has been really terrific, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for doing this.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
Well, take care. We'll look for you in January.
I loved his interview.
So our thanks again to David Ansen. And I do want to remind our listeners, check us out at wherehollywoodhides.com. Take a look at our book, Where Hollywood Hides Santa Barbara, Celebrities in Paradise. Film festival season is coming up. It's a great souvenir. It also gives you a lot of background about the history of Santa Barbara and its relationship to Hollywood.
So since we just interviewed one of the major movie critics of
this generation,
mm-hmm. I would like to critique a few movies that we've seen.
Oh, go for it.
Since I can't be a critic in my lifetime
now.
But
everybody's a critic. So what movies have you seen lately that you really like?
We've seen The Walk, The Martian, and Everest. And I thought The Walk was good.
Bob Zemeckis, unbelievable. First of all, the selection of such challenging material, and then to pull it off. The Twin Towers are really central to the story.
And a very emotional topic for all Americans. Martian.
The Martian.
Now, I'm a huge fan of Matt Damon.
The Bourne Identity on Mars.
I want to be with Bourne.
The time.
But
wasn't it kind of like MacGyver is on Mars? The guy can do anything with a paper clip?
In my opinion, better than Gravity. I think it was Matt that did it for me.
Now, you're not a big fan of films where one of the actors breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the audience, but...
Are you talking about The Walk?
No, I'm talking about The Martian, because throughout most of the movie, Matt Damon is talking right to us, practically.
But he's talking to NASA.
Uh-huh.
That's the difference. I didn't make that association.
Interesting.
As opposed to The Walk, it was a Woody Allen moment.
Yeah.
He was talking to the camera.
But interesting, those two movies basically use the same technique, one to much greater effect than the other.
And then Everest. What a tragic, true movie.
I'm not climbing mountains, and I'm not going skiing. I don't want to be cold.
You know what? I couldn't get past that it was a true story, so I don't even know if I like the film. I just know I don't like the story.
And interestingly, those three films you mentioned, when you walk in the theater, you know how they're going to end, but still... You're glued to your seat, waiting for that end.
I didn't know that Martian was going to end that way.
Oh, you knew Matt Damon? Come on, they're not going to leave him on Mars.
Well, I didn't know.
Well,
I didn't look it up for that reason.
Okay,
now,
all right.
The Walk, of course, you know,
and
Everest, you know.
Anyway, three great films. Our hats off to local Santa Barbara boy Bob Zemeckis for pulling that one off, and our great friend Dennis Sands, who was the re-recording. What's his title? He's he's the ultimate sound mixer.
Yes.
He does all the music effects, the dialogue, everything.
So we're very biased with The Walk.
And there are some great music cues in The Walk that you simply have to hear because the music really does drive a lot of the drama.
So out of those three films, I can tell you right now, I won't be walking the tightrope, I won't be in a spaceship, and I certainly will not be climbing Everest, ever.
I join you in those sentiments.
So, David, those are my critiques of my three films. What do you think?
Right. I think David's job is secure.
Thank you.
Right.
So we want to thank all our listeners all over the world for tuning in and listening to all our podcasts. We love doing it, and we encourage everyone to please like us.
Go to Facebook/Where Hollywood Hides. Give us a like, or go to iTunes and give us one of those 5-star reviews. It really does help get the word out.
So... This is Suzanne Herrera-McCullough.
And this is Bob McCullough, who's not going to shave his beard.
Ha ha. We'll see you at the movies. And today's music is provided by Chance McCullough. You can find more of his original soundtracks at chancemccullough.com.
From Chilicopies and Paducas with their bazookas to get their names up in lights.
All armed with photos from local roados. Hooray for Hollywood. You have no way of knowing who'll be good.
Maybe you'll be another Papa Neon, your name in neon. If you get lucky, you could. Yes, buddy, you'll arrive if you could top his 5. Hooray for Hollywood.